Okay, welcome to another web design tutorial where I show you how to create modern websites using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. In this tutorial we're going to talk about how to create a responsive header or a responsive masthead that goes across the kind of a header bar that goes across the top of the page. Sometimes this will follow you down the page, and sometimes it's just stuck to the very top and it scrolls out of view. That will be for a different, showing how to do the fixed. That'll be a different tutorial. But in this one, I just want to get the basic design out there, and then how, whenever the screen and the viewport changes, how to make sure that the trigger goes away. So the little hamburger menu or whatever you're using, the icon, it goes away, and it shows when there's enough space. It shows all the rest of the links just kind of in a line. So we're going to cover a few different things here. It's mostly going to be it's just going to be HTML and CSS. So I'm going to try to show you how to do it without doing any sort of JavaScript or browser sniffing or anything like that. So should be able to do that just with some hide classes, and then media queries at different breakpoints to show and hide things along the way. So hopefully that'll be easy enough. And I'm going to show you, this is the way I would do just kind of a simple one with a trigger, and then they click that trigger, and then it pulls in a menu, like it slides in a menu, or it pulls down a menu, or a menu comes up full screen or something like that. So there's a few different options that you would have for the actual menu itself, but this will be how you get to that menu. Alright, so again, I'm writing in Pug. If you ever want to look at the compiled HTML, you can do that. Otherwise, it should be pretty simple to follow. I'm also writing my CSS in Sass and JavaScript in jQuery. So I don't think I'll need any JavaScript, but maybe I'll show you how to do that too, to just do some simple show hide classes. So first we need to get the structure of our header, and right now I'm just going to make an outer container called Masthead, and then inside that container I like to do an inner. It's not always necessary. But I prefer to do an inner, that way I can control spacing with the outer wrapper. So in the masthead inner, I'm going to have two things. I'm going to have the site title, I guess is how you would say it. Let's go ahead and just make that an H1 with a class of site title, and I'm just going to put site title here, just some sort of placeholder text. And then the other thing that I want is I want a navigation menu, and we're going to call this main nav. And then inside of that container we're going to have an unordered list. And so this unordered list is what we're going to use for our menu. It's very common to use an unordered list, which is the bulleted list, in order to create a menu, even a horizontal menu. So our first list item is, I'm just going to do the links themselves. So it equals, we'll just put some sort of placeholder there, and then we'll say link 1, and then we'll just copy that a few times. So we have a few different links here, say link 2 and link 3. And you can see over here that we have our links showing up with our bullets, and we're going to get rid of those in just a moment. And then the last list item that I want to do is our hamburger button, or it's our actual trigger. So this is going to be called, we can put it on the list item, and we can say menu trigger. Okay, so we got to give it some sort of specific name, so that we can call that when we click on menu trigger, then something happens. So in the JavaScript, you want to give that some sort of a name. We're not going to go quite that far this time, but you could do that. I'm using something for my fonts called the Iconic Material Design, or Material Design Iconic font, and you can find it at this web address. And what it is, it's a material design icon font, and so you see it's pretty extensive, and it has kind of it's Google's material design icons, except it's an icon font. So I find it very helpful in the sites that I build. They tend to be more on the material design sort of style, a little more modern. So that's what I use. You can download them and you can actually add them to your project in a root folder or a local folder. Or you can call it, if you go to the Get Started page, you can call it from this link here. So it's CDN is serving it up, so you can use this and just put it into your project in the head of the document or the head of the page. In CodePen, which is what I'm using, you can go to the CSS tab and you can search for it. So you just type in material design iconic font. Obviously won't show. I look for iconic, and then it's down here, you can see, and then you just add that in. I already have it here. So and once you add that into your project, you're able to just pull these icons straight into your project. So what we're going to use today is I'm just going to go with a simple hamburger or menu. So I have it right here. It's called menu. And all you do is copy and paste that. So you copy it here, you paste it into your project, and it should show up. Let me see. Do we need to put it up here? There we go. Huh. For some reason it's not. Oh, there it goes. Okay. Now it's a link. It just took a minute to catch up, I guess. So you just put it in here. Make sure that when you add this in, that you add it into you either wrap it with a link or you wrap it with a paragraph tag or some sort of tag. You can't just put that in there by itself. It's not text. So or it is text. It just needs to be wrapped with some sort of tag. Okay, some sort of HTML tag. So here it's wrapped inside of an anchor link. So it's an actual link that can be clicked. Okay, so here's our menu. It doesn't look like much right now because we haven't styled it with CSS, but that's what we should do now. So I'll go down here, and the first thing that I want to do is I want to there are a couple different ways to work through this. First, you should have your viewport at a small viewport size, just so you can begin to work with it. That's my opinion. What we're going to do is I'm just going to say, actually I know that in CodePen there's a little bit of margin there, so I'm just going to clear out that margin. You can see that it pulls it all the way over. Let's do the masthead. Sometimes there's no great way to get in there. You just kind of get in there and start doing stuff. So the background color is going to be let's just give it some sort of color. It's better than nothing. And we're going to target the site title. And the reason there's a space up here is because there's a margin on this H1. So we just have to get rid of that margin and say margin 0. And then that snugs it up to the top. Okay, so then because we have this inner and because we have an outer wrapper, we can actually put our padding on the outer wrapper, and it'll kind of push everything away. And we'll work on that in just a minute. So we have that, and then let's go down to our let's work on the masthead inner. And what we want to do is we want these links to come up here side by side with the site title. And we can do that here because we have the masthead inner, and then if we do a display flex, then we have these two elements that are going to flex side by side. So let's just add a display flex. So this is adding flexbox. You can see up here that our links have been pulled up onto the same line as this. If you want proof, then I can do align center and then center, and it should pull this title down so that it's centered with align items, sorry. And then it should pull this down so that they're centered together. So this one is kind of tall, so it pulls it down so that it's centered. I want to go ahead and justify these. Justify the content space between. If you're not familiar with Flexbox, I also have some Flexbox videos so you can learn how to use Flexbox. This all was not really very easy to do 5 or 10 years ago. And then the introduction of Flexbox has made some of these common things that we do very easy. So you can see now that we have these two elements. They're side by side, but one is stuck on this side and one is stuck on this side at the edges. And that's what space between does. So it allows space between your two different elements. Okay. But go back and there's a really great tutorial in CSS tricks for Flexbox. There's all sorts of content out there. I have my own video series on Flexbox as well. Okay, so let's move on to what we need to do is we need to make this not vertical, but we need to make it horizontal. So let's go ahead and begin working on the main navigation. So we're going to target the main nav UL, and that's the actual unordered list here. You could make this actual unordered list main nav if you wanted to, or you could call it anything that you want to call it. This is typically how I do it. It could be more specific, but only if it needed to be more specific. So in the unordered list, what we want to do is we want to take away the bullets. So these little dots, we want to take those away, and then we want to pull it and get rid of any padding or margin that are on it. So let's do list style of none, and then that gets rid of our bullets. But you can see that we still have, you can't see it very well now, but you'll be able to see it in a minute. There's some padding on there, so we'll make the padding 0. And it's hard to see because there's nothing to the left of it, but trust me, it actually did something. And then we'll actually take the margin, we'll say 0 too, because that's going to help us in the long run with our padding and our spacing. Okay, so we have everything flush against the edges. We need to make this horizontal, and the way we do that is we just say display flex right on the unordered list, and you can see that it changes them. And whenever I have a list that's pushed all the way to the right, what I want is space on the left side of each of these links. And so I'm just going to do a quick little margin left and say, 1 rem or something like that. That actually goes on the list items. Sorry. So each list item will have 1 rem of space. You can see it better right here. So that is our the beginnings of our masthead here, of our header. We're getting really close. And what I want to do is go into the masthead up here, and I want to add a little bit of space. So let's go back in here and add a padding of 1 rem all the way around, and then that should give us a little bit of space, a little breathing room. You could also make that, if you like the space on the ends but not on the top, you could say 0.5, and then that would shore up the top a little bit, so kind of compress it some. I like on a phone 1 rem of space gives me a nice amount of space, so it's 16 pixels essentially all the way around. And what we want to do is, at a small size, we want this to show and we want this to hide. And as we grow out to a larger size, we want these to show, and we want this to hide. So let's do something arbitrary like, I don't know. Since our links are small, let's just do like 550 pixels. That's kind of arbitrary. So this will be our breakpoint where we get rid of the hamburger menu and we start to show our links. Okay. If you had long links, you would just kind of need to fiddle with it and figure out, when does everything fit. So that's essentially, you kind of do a little bit of touch and feel with your responsive design, and don't just go at predetermined breakpoints. Go with kind of the look and feel of the content. That way, everything will fit together better, and it'll feel like it's a flowing website. So the way we are going to get rid of these, we're going to give each of these its own class, and that's going to be distinct from the menu trigger. We're just going to call it menu link. So when I come down here, I can target now those menu links. And we can say display none. And what we do when we do display none is essentially we're hiding it. It's in the code, but it's not showing on the page. So no one's going to be able to see it. Okay, so this is exactly what we want. I'd like to style that menu trigger a little bit better. So let's just make it a little bit more prominent. So menu trigger is going to be font size. Because this is an icon font, we can treat it just like a font. So you say a font size of 1.5 rem, maybe. We'll make it a little bit bigger and a little bit more prominent. So we have our trigger set. We have our menu links. They're hidden, but the problem is they're always hidden, regardless of how big it is. So what we want to do is we want to set a media query that sets them as display block, which is what we want, or you could do inline block since it's a menu. So what we say is at media, and at the minimum width we said 550 pixels. Then the menu link we want to set to display block. Let's see if that works. So we're right now at 440 pixels, and so as we go out, voila, then they show up. Okay, you see how that works? So they're not there. So this is like from 0 to 550 pixels, there's display none, and then after 550 pixels, there's display block. So in order to get rid of the menu trigger, which we don't need anymore whenever our links are showing, then we sort of reverse the process for the menu trigger. So instead of showing the menu trigger, we want to set it to display none at 550 pixels. So the way that we do that is we set menu trigger to display none. You'll see it should go away. And so now we have our menu trigger showing. We have our menu trigger going away. So it's as easy as that to create a responsive header or masthead that has a little link that you can click to open up a menu, like a fly-out menu or a slide-in menu, or a menu that slides down, or however you want the animation to happen. That's actually an easy way to do it. Let me show you. I'll show you the JavaScript way to do this. So what we want to do is set this here. So now we have all of our things here. I gotta add jQuery here. So let me do that real fast. Okay, and then what you would do is you would say for our we need another class here. We need what's called a hide class. So we'll say hide is display none, and all we're going to do is simply turn on and off that hide class. Okay, so whenever we have to do some fancy footwork here, so we have to do window, we'll make a variable. So window width equals window.width, and then if the window width is less than 550, then do something. So what we want to do is we want to hide the menu links, right? So we would say menu link, add class of hide, else well, we can just leave it at that, just an if statement, and then we'll write another if statement if the window, sorry, so we'll add a class of hide, and we'll say for the menu trigger we need to remove class of hide. Okay. Alright, hopefully I'm doing all this right. And then we'll say if probably just need to wrap this all in a function. So let's see, a function of set links. Let's see if that helps us out. Okay, so now we're taking the variable. So if the window width is greater than, we can actually put this all in one statement. Let's say else if window width is greater than 550, then essentially we're just reversing the process. So this is going to be remove class of hide. This is going to be add class of hide. Okay. So let's see how that works when we go to our page here. Alright. Oh, we got to call it. We have to finish our function, and then we have to call this set links, and then it should work. Let's pull it up here. Okay, it does work. So we're hiding our icon out here. Let's see. Oh, not removed class, but remove class. Okay. So let's set that here, and it should be hiding. Okay, so now we're hiding our menu. And then if we, because it's set whenever the page reloads. So this is the downside to the JavaScript. So this is why I wanted to show you the CSS only method. Whenever you use the JavaScript, you can see that we've changed the width of our viewport, but I haven't reloaded the page. So if you don't reload the page, this is not going to run again. So it's not going to evaluate these things unless you ask it to evaluate when the window or the viewport changes, which is not a big deal for the most part when you're developing a website, because most people are not out here changing the window size. And if they are, then changing the window size down to here is not a big deal. They can still access the links. But if the device goes and loads the page, it's going to evaluate what is the viewport width, and then it's going to run the appropriate code. So if we refresh, we should get our hamburger menu and no other menus. You see there's a little bit of flash there of the menu, because what happens is it loads all of the content first and then runs JavaScript. So this is also a little bit of an issue with JavaScript. So unless you really need to put the JavaScript in there, I would just go with the CSS only option, because once the page loads, the CSS is loaded in the head and everything takes as the page is painted down. So it loads the CSS first, and then it connects the CSS to the page. So you have all these things happening here, and they're happening on the fly. So as the page is painted, these are being applied. With JavaScript, the page is loaded, and then everything is hit with the JavaScript, which happens really fast, but it's obviously not instantaneous, which you can see from here. So there's a little bit of flash, and then it hides it. Okay, so excuse me, a little bit different style, but you essentially wind up with the same thing. And there are instances where you might want to, I've had to use the JavaScript instead of the CSS, but I think if you get creative, or if you have more of a simplistic style, then you're going to be able to use the CSS only menu link. So because it is connected with a class here, you should be able to just trigger some sort of menu with this menu trigger, and then trigger it with the JavaScript later on. So I will do that in another video, but that is how we create a responsive header or a masthead that includes some sort of icon that you can click on and open a menu at smaller screens, and includes a set of links that will show at larger viewports. If you have any questions, please leave a comment down below. If it's been enjoyable to you, or if you think it'll be useful for someone else, please share this with others on social media. I would appreciate that, and I just want to be able to help as many people as I can. And if you have an issue, leave it down in the comments as well. I'll leave a link to this pen so that you can play around with the code on here. And I think I'll leave the CSS on here. I'll just comment this out, but I'll leave the CSS here. And it won't be such a big deal that this hide is there. You can use it as a class if you want to, but again, it'll function with the CSS first, and then if you want to play around with the JavaScript, you can do that as well. Alright, you can also ask me questions at Twitter. So my Twitter handle is @BrianHafferkamp, Brian with an I, and I'm totally open to a conversation or ideas that you have. Also be sure to check out some of my other web development videos. I have a series on Flexbox and a series on CSS Grid. So if you've enjoyed this style of tutorial, those are going to be much the same. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.